Hello and welcome everyone to Insights. I'm Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. Thank you for joining us.
Today on the program, we will talk about the disturbing storm brewing in Nigeria's cyberspace, threatening to engulf the nation in a maelstrom of division and discord. I'm talking about the vibrant online community of Twitter Nigeria, which otherwise has degenerated into a battleground of ethnic vitriol, with insults, abuses, and hateful slurs flying between individuals from two or more of the country's major ethnic groups. This alarming escalation of online hostilities has reached a fever pitch, raising profound concerns about the fragile state of Nigeria's unity and the potentially catastrophic consequences of unchecked ethnic tensions. We will be looking at the need to stop now and perhaps redirect the conversation. We would also talk about why, in spite of whatever differences exist amongst us as a people, what we share supersedes what divides us, and why that forms or will form the first and major part of today's episode. Elizabeth is on hand for another equally important discussion. Elizabeth?
Of course, we'll also be analyzing the national policy on aging, how it has been aiding geriatric care, and efforts of the focal agency in mainstreaming aging.
Very well then. Let's kickstart the conversation.
Whatever the issues are,
the National Assembly is constitutionally empowered to scrutinize,
however complex or intricate.
We have involved all the academia, the members of the academia. We have involved the academies.
Be it government policies or in fact any issue of public concern.
Our job is to help you gain clarity and make sense of it all.
This is not really healthy for our democracy.
There's a lot of agreements in terms of who has been in power longest and who becomes the governor of the state.
It's also in the quality of food being consumed.
After all, perception is insight.
And gaining understanding is also getting insight.
I'm sure many amongst the older generation of Nigerians still recall the fierce nature and long-term losses associated with some of the ethnic conflicts we've had in this country over the last few decades. I reckon a good number must remember the Ife-Modakeke conflict, the Ogoni-Andoni ethnic conflict, even the Shagamu-Kano ethnic. That, in fact, was violent. It was a violent conflict between the Hausas and the Yorubas. Let's not fail to highlight the Zango-Kataf ethnic conflict. I think that was somewhere in Kaduna State, the Jukum-Tiv conflict. And I can go on and on. But at this time, I'm not choosing to reference the Nigerian civil war, not just yet, especially not within the context of this conversation, and that's for some reasons. The bottom line is that certain interconnected and interwoven social and economic factors gave rise to some of these past conflicts, and it would seem that those same factors are again rearing their heads and leading us towards the same negative path. I'm talking about the pervasive tension bordering, that thin line between ethnic rivalry and all-out war currently raging on Nigeria's social media, fueled by hate speech, misinformation, and inflammatory rhetorics. As tension exacerbates online, especially on Twitter, there are concerns. These concerns, they mount about the nation's fragile unity and the potential for real-world violence. Let me bring in my panel for this conversation. I'll begin with Daisy, not the flower Oge. She has over 22,000 followers on Twitter. That means she definitely passes for an active and vibrant contributor in that community. She is a professional massage therapist, but that's not what we are here for. She's more of a content creator and an online entrepreneur. Daisy, by the way, I love most of your content. I did a cursory look, quick one, but I did like what I saw. Welcome to Insights.
Thank you. Good morning.
Nice. Next is Blessing Eliagu. Blessing is the convener, peace ambassador for Better Naija. She also has that big title of CEO, DB Global Concept. Blessing, of course, you're not the other Blessing CEO that we know or see on Instagram, right?
This is Blessing the Painter. Good morning.
Fantastic. Nice to have you join us here.
Thank you.
My third panelist is Ahmed Tijani Ibn Mustafa. He's a strategic communications expert. You know, I think he has like 21.3 thousand followers on Twitter. That makes Ahmed definitely another vibrant and active member of that global Twitter community. Ahmed, good to have you join us for this conversation.
An absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Nnamdi.
Great. Ladies, gentlemen, I realize there are complex factors driving Nigeria's online ethnic conflict, but I am particularly worried at the level of passion from the warring camps, which are largely negative, and I'm sure all of us here are aware of that. I cannot begin to read some of the comments that I see emanating from all of the sides involved in this online war that we're talking about. But like, again, I'm sure you guys have seen some of these comments. I think, Daisy, I would like to start with you. To what extent do you think some of this, this festering online ethnic conflict reflect or influence offline realities in Nigeria's context? How much are some of what we see online products of our everyday life here in Nigeria?
Well, so because social media is the future now, everybody's on social media. What is happening on social media is what's also happening in real life. There's some people that just translate everything they see online to real life, and at the end of the day, it's damaging their relationships, it's even affecting their jobs. And I'm like, it's social media. Let's focus on what's really important. And then some of these fights are baseless, if we're being honest, because some people don't even know the root causes of this fight. All they care about is, oh, I saw the social media influencer talking about this, so therefore I'm going to put in my 2 cents, and then, before you know what's happening, it's already a full-blown fight. So somehow, it just affects everything negatively.
Blessing.
Yeah, of course. We all know social media has greatly changed the way we interact, the way we pass information, and also the way we engage. So what is lacking currently is the need and the lack for orientation. There's no orientation on how the people should engage and promote national unity. So those things, we see it, and then it is really affecting the way we relate with one another, the way we engage with one another. Like my colleague has rightly said, the social media is, let's say, a second phase of the reality. So whatever it is we do online, take it or leave it, it's been translated to reality. And most of those things is not just from the social media. Most of these things are actually inborn. Some of this orientation are with us. It is just that we don't have the avenue.
Online.
You understand? There was no avenue to pass this thing. So these things are with us. It is just that the social media has given a platform to amplify this thing. So now that we are seeing these things, what's the way forward and what do we do?
Ahmed.
I'd like to take a different view. While I agree that we must nip these conversations on the board, I do not think that they actually reflect our everyday realities. Nigerians intermarry, where there's a melting pot of cultural heritage in Nigeria. And while these rhetorics are dangerous, I do not think that they, at the moment, affect our everyday lives. I work with people from different backgrounds in this country.
I mean, there's something we call alternative facts, and you know how dangerous that can be. It doesn't remove alternative fact is not fact, okay? Yeah. But people tend to create them as alternative to the facts. And then we describe the social media as a realm, like an alternative realm.
I agree with you, but the question you ask is if what is happening online,
a product of our everyday life,
correlates to what is happening in real life. True. I do not completely agree that it correlates. Yes, there's a bit of it filtering into what we see offline, but social media gives you, it's a leveler.
Amplified version.
The kind of things that you can't say to somebody when you're looking them straight in the face, you can say to them because you're hiding behind a keypad and you don't know who that person is. So if you meet people in real life, your opinions that you've heard on social media, I do not think that most of those who are creating these rhetorics can, in real life, voice out these opinions. But like Blessing said, these opinions are inborn, they're in there. Social media just gives you a platform to amplify them. But as to your question whether it affects or it translates to what we experience in our daily lives, I don't quite agree. But again, we must begin to nip this in the bud because evil communication, they say, corrupts good manners. Daisy,
you don't think some of what we're seeing online, the dragging, the attacks, the insults and all of that, do you think it lends somewhat to affecting offline realities? Like, do you think that's any effect on relationships? In fact, you alluded to that earlier. There are I don't want to mention names here, but I know of a particular episode where someone alleged, or someone actually knows that another person that she met at a salon attacks her online, and then they met in real life at a salon, you know, and then the other person now greeted her, and then she just took offense and said, look, give me the same energy you give me online. Give it to me here. I mean, we see these things happening every day. Daisy, don't we?
So what I think is that it's a generational thing, right? For the millennials, for the Gen Z, for the people that are under 30, what is happening online is also happening offline. Because me, for example, if I meet a person, the next thing I'm checking is, what's your name? I'm looking at my phone and checking, what's this person's handle? What does he do? What does he talk about and all that? First of all, I want to see your online presence. So whatever you're doing online is definitely reflecting offline as well. Both of them is a collabo, really.
Okay. Have you landed there?
Yes, I have.
Great. Ahmed, I'd like to come to you real quick. I mean, owing to some of these issues and, you know, attacks that we see online, sometimes we even see some information wholesomely fake and, you know, misleading. I wonder, you know, if, and it emerges from all of the sides involved in this war. I wonder what your thoughts are on, you know, and how increasingly difficult it is to distinguish between legitimate grievances and hate speech in online discussions, especially those ones that involve ethnic groups. What do you think the implications are for free speech, for censorship? You know, when and we all know what happens with cyberbullying, for instance, and how that is almost like a constant now, especially when people disagree on issues there on Twitter. You know, how do you think these things, you're hardly able to distinguish between what is now fact, what is now hate speech, or rather not even hate speech, what is now the alternative facts, and its impact on free speech and what's it called, and censorship? Ahmed, I mean, if you try to put this in context.
That's a brilliant question. I like that you raised that. So we must understand what the root causes of this misinformation, deliberate or indeliberate, is. It's basically, you've got to understand that the moment content creation became a job for certain people, it gave an avenue for them to, and they realized just how, as they say in media spaces, bad news sells. So if you realize, if you tested the waters, you put out positive news or good news, and the engagement is not as encouraging as when you put out bad news, you then discover that as a means of revenue generation, people deliberately, those people who do these things, do not actually intend to set the country ablaze. You know, for them, it's a means of raising their online profile and generating revenue for themselves. But like you said, these things have far-reaching consequences. And the easiest example I can point to is what happened with the Hutus and the Tutsis in Rwanda. You know, 800,000 Hutus and Tutsis died in that war because of sheer misinformation. And like I said, if care is not taken, we might be pushing ourselves in that direction. And this is why these kind of conversations are important for us to very quickly begin to nip these things in the bud. It's a growing concern, it's festering, and every day we seem to be digging ourselves deeper into this very dark hole. So as a nation, we must begin to make conscious and concise effort of bringing ourselves out of this doldrum that we find ourselves in. Again, you ask yourselves, why is it predominant amongst young people? And you find out that for a lot of young people, the need for research and the need to read far and wide is not there. So people just sit down in their little corners and make up fictitious stories and put it online, and it catches traction. So if it works for you the first time, then you do it again. Before you know what's going on, it becomes your stock in trade. And because you know that your audience are gullible enough to swallow everything you throw at them, hook, line, and sinker, you will continue. At the end of the day, it's making you money, and you're so short-sighted, you cannot see the danger that is actually potent for you and for the nation at large.
Blessing, do you want to talk about the activities of trolls, bots, and even sponsored content like Ahmed just alluded to, and how dangerous, you know, that can also be and exacerbates, you know, already, you know, the tension already existing online, and, you know, further this divisiveness that we're talking about. Blessing.
Namdi, take it or leave it. This is an energy. And as we all know...
But it's a dark one.
As we all know,
it's
energy
negative energy.
cannot be destroyed. It can only be converted from one form to the other. Like I said, these things are right from our origin. Where I come from, sometimes the elder ones try to describe another tribe, and you hear things like Ogbemepu. Do you understand?
True.
Or Olebewo. So you can't say it is being generated by social media. No.
True.
This is who we are first. We only have the platform to now air them out. Before now, we didn't have the opportunity to say these things. But now the social media has given us that platform to say it to a larger audience. So that is where the negativity and the effect of it comes from. Because a lot of persons have been trained in this, or probably brought up in this line, to talk down on other tribes, talk down on other ethnic groups, and then the kids, the children, take it from their homes to a larger stage. So that's what we're talking about. Now, if those energies are not there, there is no how it can be leashed upon or capitalized on to yield another result. Because that's what is happening. Like Ahmed said, content generation is because that thing is there. Is at the back of everybody's mind, and they're trying to deny it or suppress it. So somebody comes up and then try to pinpoint one or two things about the other tribe or about the ethnic groups, and then you start seeing people who have that same school of thought responding to it. So yes, it is there. It is not being created because there's a social media now. It is there, right? Just like I gave an example of back in the days, these were things we were being told. You understand? So people now look for avenues to probably monetize it or use it across party lines. You understand? So these things are there before now.
Well, okay,
Namdi, if I could quickly respond to what
yes, very
said.
quickly.
Okay,
because I need Daisy's thoughts on monetizing content.
Let me just clarify something.
Yes, please.
I agree with what she said, but I have a little digression here. And this is the fact that I know a lot of people, because I work in the media space, I met a lot of people who do not in real life believe 90% of the things they say online. They don't, but they know that this sells, is why they're putting it out there. I know people who come online and create ethnic tension online, but if you meet them in real life, they're a completely different entity from their online persona. So you find out that the only reason why they do this is because they realize that these things create engagement. So, but in agreeing with what she said, is the only reason why this first starts is because people agree with it, and a lot of people are dogged enough to just go along with it. You know, everybody just swallows that content and we move along with it. If we must tamper this very quickly, like we and I were having a conversation offline, I told you that we must begin to go into the primary and secondary schools and begin to reorientate our young ones from that stage. Because
great. We'll talk about that more of that down the line. I'd like to get Blessing's thought real quick on the activities of trolls, bots, and some of this sponsored content, and the fact that this whole situation may have exacerbated, may have been made worsened by monetization of content there on the social media.
About monetizing content on social media, it did not become a thing until very recently. These ethnic wars we're talking about online, they have been on for years. We're talking before COVID. We're talking 2015, 2018, way before 2020. When did they start paying content creators? On Twitter, on X now, when did they start talking about verification and you cannot get paid for your content? So thinking that the pushing force is the pay is a lie. Because if you go back to check, all this content about wars and fights and whatever, they've always been there. So I do not agree that the money they're getting paid from Elon Musk is the reason why they're going about, writing fake stories and all. Besides that, some of these stories, yes, they may be fake. But the truth is, if you put out a fake story, it will be taken down. We know these things. But some of the stories still say, because they are the truth. It's the truth. We know this.
Sorry to say, but not all of the fake stories are put down or are removed. Earlier on, I talked about free speech, and that's one of the things Elon Musk has been pushing on Twitter. These need to, curb censorship and allow for free speech. But I would like to cross over to Ahmed real quick. In the course of our intervention earlier, Blessing introduced a political angle to the mix. Ahmed, I suspect, and very strongly too, that this divisiveness and lack of tolerance that we see that exists in our political atmosphere right now is going to continue to drive us further apart. Let me ask you this, and directly too.
Okay.
Isn't it possible for me not to agree with you, politically in many ways, but in some ways, and yet meet you at a common ground, somewhere that we both agree on? Can people with political differences, not amplify that area that they agree on, that unifying principle, rather than, the divisiveness that we see on Twitter, for example?
That's another brilliant question. I think at the base of it, we have to realize that we're all looking for a better country. So I don't think anybody who holds any political view different from yours or different from mine wants this country to go down. And people must realize that democracy itself gives people the option of choice. People have to make a choice, and we all can agree on a particular political choice. That's the beauty. If we all did, it would be monotonous. It would be very boring. And now, just to answer your question, of course, the things that unite us are far more than the things that divide us. So you and I don't agree on politics. Probably we support the same football club, or probably we worship in the same religious center, or probably we went to the same secondary school, or we grew up in the same geographical location. So there are a lot of things that unite us, much more than the things that divide us. And what we need to do, particularly as young people, because I find out that with the older generation, that division is not as wide as it is amongst young people. As young people, we must actively, intentionally focus on the things that unite us. Like I've said, there are a couple of things. And you find Nigerians presenting a united front. Funny enough, even online, when, say, Ghanaians and Kenyans or South Africans come against Nigerians, you find out that, you suddenly just find out that Nigerians can unite and be Nigerians for once. So I didn't ask myself the question, how is it that it's so easy for us to present a united front against a foreign, for lack of better word, foreign enemy? Yes, a perceived foreign enemy. But once that energy is dissipated, we then return into our shells and then begin to divide ourselves along whether ethnic, cultural, or religious, or even political lines. It's sad, and it breaks my heart often. So I wish that, like Blessing said, the NOA can lead this charge where we begin to promote ideals that unite us as a country. There are too many things that unite Nigerians as a country. If you find the Super Eagles playing football right now, everybody is Nigerian. If you find Toby Amusan running for Nigeria, everybody, Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, Tiv, Calabar, wherever you're from, everybody's cheering her on to win Olympic. And when she didn't win, we all felt the heartbreak of it. So how is it then so easy for us to then suddenly, once that is done, find ourselves tearing ourselves apart along political, religious, or ethnic lines? Is really, really, really heartbreaking.
Blessing, I want to come to you, and that's because you brought the political mix into the conversation. And Ahmed here has just responded by talking about, or dialing down on the imperatives for projecting, those things that define us, that is common to us, rather than the things, that divide us. So do you agree that certain people exploit ethnic differences for political gains at the cost of human suffering? And by championing these divisions on the streets of Twitter, especially, maybe social media, young people are furthering this divide and pushing the country yet again to the precipice. Like I asked Ahmed, what in your opinion, do you think, isn't it possible for these Nigerians on Twitter, these young people that we're talking about with sometimes deep political differences and ethnic differences, to still love each other as human beings?
Oh, thank you, Namdi. If political actors are funding this, yes, that's correct. If they use ethnicity and religion to push their political narrative, yes, that's true. That's very correct. So what I think is that as young people, we have to present a united front and resist it. It is a bad trend. It cannot stand, and we should not allow it to see the light of the day. Just like Abike Dabiru, who yes, was in the UK, and she made an utterance. We saw how young people rose up against it. Both her countrymen and women, people from her own tribe. And they said, no, we are not part of this. We say no to this. And she was picked up in the UK and was dealt with. So those are the kind of things we want to be seeing.
Actually, that was Abike Dabiri making interventions on an issue that arose in Canada. and then she formally reported it to the Canadian authority. But of course, I get what you mean. Daisy, I mean, you are very active on the streets of Twitter. I mean, I monitored some of your threads and all of that. I wonder if you're part of people who do these basbos on Twitter, but that's not the thing. The thing is, I'm sure you see it. How does it make you feel? And especially when they bring the politics, I mean, the politics of it, and people trying to exploit, you know, our cultural, ethnic differences to push this narrative. And like I asked Blessing, do you not think that in spite of all of these differences that exist, the fact that you and I may not agree politically, I'm not sure who or what your political leaning is. And as a matter of fact, I don't care about that. What I care about is that Daisy, as you're a beautiful young lady, and I should love you as a human being. I mean, shouldn't that be what we should be pushing on the streets of Twitter?
You know, sometimes it's really disheartening to see some of these threads, because the people that are reading these threads, just the way Ahmed said earlier, they don't do research. They don't want to know more. All they feed on is so said this on Twitter. They read to the end and they take it hook, line, sinker, and that is it. It's sad, because at the end of the day, it's what has been propagated on Twitter that they take to be real life. And then when they come to real life, they don't even know better. So at the end of the day, it's just wahala. You know, everybody just fighting for no reason. The young people are saying that there is a problem. What caused the problem? They don't know. Who caused it? They don't know. Somebody said. It's frustrating. I just hope that the young people, they're able to do their own research. They're able to speak up for themselves. They're able to have something that they believe in. If they're for the war, fine. If they're not for the war, awesome. But choose a stand. Don't do something or say something simply because you saw it on social media and you feel social media has all the verified news. No, that shouldn't be it at all. I just wish people can really do research and find out about what is really going on in the country. Because, you know, Ahmed said something about, or was it Nnamdi, when he said something about the online war translating to offline, right?
Yes.
And you mentioned that person meeting somebody at the salon and the person said, maintain the energy.
Don't call names, though, because we know they are two very popular people. We don't want to.
It's funny because online, it's not even offline. But because something has happened there, they feel translate that same energy. The same thing too with all these wars going on there. The Igbo says the Hausa says the Yoruba says the this one. Come on, the Middle Belt is saying no. We need to be one Nigeria. We just turned 64 now, 64.
64 as a matter of fact.
We just turned 64. We can't be fighting like toddlers.
You know, I'm talking about that and moving forward now. Ahmed, I would like to bring you in at this point. You and I think Blessing referenced NOA and some of what we should begin to do as a way to go forward. So let's just move this conversation towards, you know, the potential for online peace-building initiatives and reconciliation efforts, because that's where I think we should be. How can we begin to leverage, you know, social media potential for bridging divides and promoting, you know, inter-ethnic understanding to counterbalance, you know, the prevailing narrative of conflict and division, Ahmed?
So, again, I think social media is an instrument for social change, and apart from social media, I think the NOA has a role to play. I also think that one of the biggest forms of influence over a population of people is the movie industry. I, for instance, I'm not an American, but I can tell you what the First Amendment, Second Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fourth Amendment, the 25th Amendment in the American Constitution says. This is simply because I have seen too many, well, I say too many, you know, but too many American movies for general comfort. But then again, I feel that Nollywood has a major role to play. There are Nigerians who will never pick up the Constitution to read. There are Nigerians who will never travel to as far as Zamfara or to Anambra or to Benue or to Delta, wherever. They will never get to those places. But they will sit in the comfort of their homes and watch movies that portray the good part of every other culture of Nigeria that is not theirs. And it's some form of education, the easiest form of education. And I think this is where our movie practitioners must also come in to help us. And the loudest voices on social media, our celebrities also have a role to play here. They have a genuine need to protect the unity fragile as it might be, of this nation, because we, like I always say, we don't have any other nation apart from this particular one that we have. And every Nigerian must begin to put everything they can online to ensure that we protect the fragile. If something were to happen, God forbid, to the peace that we're enjoying in this country right now, you and I would not be sitting in these studios even having these conversations to begin with. So whatever it is anybody can do in whatever little way, in our daily interactions on social media, let's be responsible with the kind of comments that we make and the kind of information that we put out there. Because at the end of the day, this information trickles farther than we think it does. Somebody reads something that I put out, and it becomes that person's life guiding ideology, and that's how they perceive other people from with different across different divides, whether political, whether religious, whether ethnic, for the rest of their lives, simply because Ahmed said this. For instance, like Blessing mentioned, there are a lot of tribal slurs that we hear.
Yes.
You hear things like Indiofe Manu, you know, and people have grown up to believe that this is what I think sparks the word that we see online now about which ethnic tribe has the best.
The way you pronounce Indiofe Manu, one would hardly believe you're Hausa.
But I am
like you're Igbo.
But that's the beauty of it. I am Nigerian. I went to school in Okpos in Ebonyi State. I grew up in Lagos, and I'm from Kano. So, you know, I'm a well-rounded.
Doesn't that put you in a rather precarious, you know, position, especially when you see some of what is playing out in social media?
No, it doesn't.
Yes.
It absolutely doesn't. It breaks my heart because I wish that every Nigerian had experienced what I went to a unity school. So from age 10, I had met people who from other religious and ethnic backgrounds, and we had mixed, and we're still friends up till today. So for me, I have seen Nigeria as a whole, and I know that there is beauty in this land, and this is the picture that I wish every other Nigerian would see. This is why I would encourage that we continue the NYSC and find a way to ensure that people don't circumvent the system by ensuring that you went to school in Kaduna and then you're serving in Kano. No, that shouldn't happen. If you have gone to school in Kaduna and you are from Kano, then you should be posted to maybe Bayelsa or Ogun for NYSC. So it gives an opportunity to see the other side and the good side of other cultures. If you've done that and you've intermixed, probably even intermarry, you begin to see the reasons why we must maintain a united front as a nation.
Daisy, Blessing. Ahmed, as mentioned, Nollywood, talked about celebrities, now talked about the NYSC, you know, as avenues that we can use to begin to, you know, redirect the conversation here and, you know, perhaps, you know, retrace our steps. What role do you think, you know, aside these people, these ones that Ahmed has mentioned, what role do you think influencers, perhaps thought leaders and opinion shapers, you know, can also play in shaping online discourse and perpetuating or mitigating ethnic tension that we see online? Social media influencers, for instance. Blessing.
Okay. Just like you rightly said, what we need at this point in time is influence. Influence to be able to help these people change their orientation. So it's not just limited to the celebrity. We can call in the clergy or religious leaders into play. And people who are leaders, not just celebrity now, they have one or two roles to play at this point in time to influence these people to understand that this path we have told as a people leads to destruction. And we need to really retrace our steps so that we can continue to live and sustain the peace and harmony we have as a people and as a nation. So yes, we need influencers, we need the imams, the pastors, the leaders, civil society coming out to create awareness. And also we need to engage these people. You know, we need to dialogue with those people, let them know, discuss with them, let's know what the problem is, and also provide solution to it. Because most times it's as a result of actions. And that is why these people have this thing at the back of their mind, and they're not letting go. So if there is a dialogue, then their minds can be disabused, and then we can now move forward as a people.
Guys,
so,
we're out of time, but very quickly, Daisy, let's get your intervention on this issue.
Okay.
I mean, what kind of messages, or how can we propagate, you know, messages online that we have so much more in common as a people than, you know, than what separates us? And how do we make such messages to resonate? You know, seeing what we see happen on the streets of social media, you know, and all of that. How can we now redirect the conversation? Just like Ahmed has said, just like Blessing here has also said.
I'm going to make reference to one person on social media that is doing something that everybody now knows, right? He's a health advocate, right? When he started some years ago, people didn't know him. Right now, he's being called.
Are you talking about Apricot doctor?
Absolutely. Right now, he's being called by the UN, by WHO, by Aquafina, by Nestle. Everybody's calling him. Why am I making reference to this person? He's one Nigerian that woke up one day and he told himself, I'm going to talk about health. I'm going to use storytelling to tell people that you can do this, you shouldn't do that. You know, he's advocating. What am I trying to say? Fellow Nigerians can do the same thing. Take it upon yourself as a responsibility. Start telling us the truth. Doing research is for us. If you use this same method, or maybe a better method that Apricot Doctor is using, at the end of the day, we will learn. There's also another person on social media right now. He's a lawyer and is using storytelling as well to tell you that, do you know that the Constitution says that this is your right? You shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. So if someone can still do the same thing about all these ethnic wars, history of Nigeria and all of that, we would sensitize the public, and then we'll now know that this is the truth, this is a fact, this is the way we are moving forward as a nation.
Fantastic. Great. Ahmed, just 10 seconds if it's possible. What are your thoughts on the proposed youth national conference being proposed, of course, by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu? Do you think this is a step in the right direction? Perhaps that may just be another avenue to, you know, to redirect the conversation and perhaps, you know, throw up this issue about our unity or unity in our diversity.
I think it's something. Yes. I think it's something that is long overdue. We should have had this. If you ask me, 10 years ago.
We did have one 14 years ago.
We should have had conversations like this should be happening, I think, twice in the lifetime of every administration, okay, because new information comes up and there are newer challenges. So it's one that I welcome. I'm only hoping and praying that it's not politicized to the point where it loses the essence of it, because at the end of the day, nation building is the key objective of this conference, and we should focus on that. I would like to see the president take charge of this. The Minister of Youth has owned it. I would also like him to completely depoliticize this so that people from different political divides and those who are even apolitical can join in these conversations and have a session that genuinely helps Nigeria, because if you ask me, we honestly.
So, Ahmed, this is definitely more than 10 seconds, but I get what you mean. And I would like to appreciate all of you, ladies, gentlemen. I mean, this has been a wonderful conversation, quite engaging, quite, you know, fascinating. But of course, time is not our friend anymore. We're completely. My director has been in my ear for beats now, telling me to round off the conversation. So we're totally out of time. But like I said, I'd like to thank you all. This is an ongoing conversation. Until we begin to see the change that we seek, we'll continue to have these conversations. And so from time to time, I would bring you into the studio so that we just so that we can continue this conversation. Daisy, Oge, Blessing, Elegu, Ahmed Tijani, Ibn Mustafa, I'd like to thank all of you for your contribution to this conversation. Thank you so much indeed.
You're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Elizabeth Omori is up next.
There are discrepancies within elder care. It is an important issue to acknowledge who is taking care of the elderly primarily. Every country in the world is experiencing growth in proportion of older persons in the population. By 2030, WHO says 1 in 6 people in the world will be 60 years or over. By 2050, the world's population of the people aged 60 years and older will double. Now, the question is, what lies ahead for this group of persons? In Nigeria, the National Senior Citizen Center has been the focal agency promoting geriatrics. On this segment, my guest, Dr. Omokaro, Director General, National Senior Citizen Center, will speak to us on Nigeria's efforts at making life better for senior citizens. Dr. Omokaro, thank you so much for joining us on Insights.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Now, geriatrics is getting serious attention in Nigeria. How have we fared in terms of integrated care since the creation of the center?
Oh, thank you very much for that question. Of course, you know, as you have said, that the population of older persons is rapidly increasing. And in Nigeria, in spite of the youth bulge, that over 60% of our population, national population, are youths, the population of older persons is increasing. Right now, we are 14.8. And of course, this population is diverse. On one extreme, you have older persons who are still engaging or seeking for opportunities to continue to engage, and they are full of vigor. And then on the other extreme end, you have older persons who have, you know, functional decline and needing long-term care, although this long-term care is in the continuum. And so for Nigeria, before now, this was, you know, totally, you know, the concern of family. Because it was culturally defined, or either through moral persuasion, you needed to take care of your own. But nobody really asked about the quality of care or about the responsiveness or the willingness of family to care. And so the legislation that set up the National Senior Citizen Center brought that shift. So for the first time, there's a policy on aging, there's a national plan of action on aging, there's a strategic roadmap on aging, and there are now programs. And particularly the question that you ask sits in that pillar program that we call health and social care. And under this health and social care, we are very mindful that there is, of this particular portion of the population that I just described. Those with functional decline, those needing, you know, those very, you know, extra social care. And this is a space that needs skilled workforce, skilled and certified caregivers. Yes, family members can help, but in this particular case, the geriatric social care, there is need for skilled, you know, qualified, you know, caregivers. So we worked with NBTE, who has a regulatory mandate on skills and vocational education. We developed the national occupational standards, you know, first in this industry, the geriatric social care. And then we're able to set up a council, because these, you need, in this kind of care, you need standards. We're able to set up the Geriatric Social Care Skills Council, according to the Nigerian Skills Qualification Framework. And then, of course, we're able to now list the training providers, because it's not everybody that can train for skills. And so we have, you know, so far listed 23 states and federal university teaching hospitals that have geriatrics units. As I speak to you now, they already began, you know, some of the members of the training team, you know, had to have, you know, their, you know, quality assessors, you know, certification. So many of them are training to have that certification, quality, you know, assurance assessors certification. And so before long now, we will now have these training providers training using the National Occupational Standard to produce skilled workforce for Nigeria. That is where to begin in the first instance.
All right, Dr. Mokaro, let me comment there. You know, the National Action Plan on Aging identifies the diversity of the older population with social inclusion of all older persons as its a cardinal point. It also embraces an optimistic perception of aging, addressing both the challenges and then our opportunities. How are all the persons you have identified benefiting from this plan?
Now, the plan of action covers the whole spectrum. There are older persons that are continuing to engage. So under the income empowerment program, we have an income empowerment program. For those ones, for instance, the traditional artisans in the rural areas, the subsistence farmers, which we had, you know, conducted a needs assessment, and we really know that they are there and engaging. It's just that they had been financially excluded. So first and foremost, we really had, in fact, to have their data, which we already have now. We had to use, NDE statewide, structures to conduct capacity enhancement, not really upskilling them, but inspiring them and training them on bookkeeping and encouraging them. And then we empower them with grants. And after a few months in the monitoring and evaluation, we saw that really the grant made an impact and they could do more. They could get more raw materials. They could even employ, their sons and their daughters in the community. So what we are doing now is that we have now clustered them into cooperatives.
Okay.
So for this category of older persons, we are really promoting their productive capacity. They can upskill, they can become life coaches too. So we run intergenerational programs. So for these ones, we are encouraging all the stakeholders. We are encouraging, churches can build senior centers, the mosque, can build senior centers, philanthropists can build senior centers. Anybody can come into this space. What we have done is that we have created the national policy guidelines and the standards, and we have the prototype and the standard programs that you can run in these senior centers. So we are inviting, partners to come and join hands to help us to build senior centers. We have the initiative that we call One Community, One Senior Center. And that brings life. Instead of sitting at home and being lonely and being alone, and feeling ostracized, you come to the center. And the youths can come to the center. It becomes a community hub. Because when you talk about geriatric care, you must also talk about support services. Older persons can be helped when we enable them by making, their environment more supportive. So for instance, helping, when their functional capacities decline, you give them supportive devices like you saw us do in Nasarawa. So there are many programs, different programs for the diverse population. There is no older person that is left out in our programming. You talked about our plan of action on aging. That plan of action is very comprehensive. There's no older persons, whether you are the grandmother, we have the Grandmothers Arise for grandmothers, helping them to access land where the culture says they can't access land by bringing them also into cooperatives, helping them to, pick what is it that you enjoy to do. And we are also in the area of dementia, where you see because of the misperception of dementia, of Alzheimer's disease, you see older persons who suffer from, you see them being ostracized. Some of them are mobbed, some of them are stoned. I know of a situation, in particular, say when one man was buried alive. So we are working with NAPTIP. We have the call lines using their call centers. Wherever you see anything, any older persons being harassed, just call the line. And we have, the privilege of using the response squad from NAPTIP. We also have their protection officers. And then we're also working with National Human Rights Commission and the Legal Aids Council in this area. So we have, a cluster of stakeholders that work in this place.
If we are to consider this is theme for the National Day of Older Persons, which aligns with their dignity, their rights, and then more specifically on healthy aging, what will be the position of your center in handling this issue?
Fortunately for us, the National Health Insurance Authority Act has provisions for vulnerable group funds. And under the vulnerable group funds, subpopulations are listed who would enjoy health insurance without paying premium. And one of those population categories listed are the older persons. So NSC is very optimistic. We are still holding on and, watching to see how this is operationalized. But before now, even before I became the Director General, there was a ministerial committee on health insurance for older persons and for retirees. And that committee worked for over 1 year and produced a report. And that report had been handed over to the Honourable Minister at that time. That was the last administration. And we had all the promises that indeed they will find a pool of funds. And of course, you ensure that older persons, even retirees, that after retirement, you don't lose your health insurance, because you have spent all your life working for government, and you had also spent a considerable part of your life contributing to the pool of funds, and now you're retired and you're dropped off. But in the meantime, while we are waiting for that operationalization, with all hope that older persons will be covered by the vulnerable group funds, we have spent time to develop the geriatric social care quality assurance and to build the systems and mechanisms, to build the policy guidelines, the national accreditation, the national minimum standard for domiciliary agency that will employ these certified caregivers. And we are moving very seriously, high-level advocacy to ensure that domiciliary care agency can be admitted, as a health provider, social care health provider for older persons, which means we are hoping and pushing that caregiving to older persons will be seen as social assistance, will be seen as part of social protection policy measure, which means that older persons that suffer and need long-term care, those ones that are not necessarily going to go to the hospital, because they are in that stage in their life where they just want to have a care plan that manages their chronic situation. Some of them mostly towards the latter life. These people cannot be left out of health insurance. So that is our prayer, that health insurance under the purview of the Federal Ministry of Health and Social Welfare, thank God social welfare has been added to that, and then so also under the purview of the National Health Insurance Authority, we'll work with NSCC. We are ready to work to show them the systems and the mechanisms that we have created, the care quality assurance system that we have created that can now bring the older persons suffering and needing long-term care and plug them still into health insurance, while also covering other older persons like retirees that left left the service. So we are really waiting for that. And we have taken time to prepare the systems, to convince them that this is possible in Nigeria.
Someone asked a very crucial question prior to this interview. He said, can we truly end elder abuse in the family units? Can you explain that? Can you talk to that? Because you are the voice of the older persons in Nigeria.
It's really very saddening for us that older persons really suffer abuse. And abuse can be what you do and can be what you fail to do. And what you do can be what you do repeatedly. Abuse, it can be verbal abuse, it can be physical abuse, even sexual molestation of older women is unthinkable. Financial abuse, fraud committed against older people. And it is also saddening to say that most of these things happen within family. And when it happens, older persons, of course, who are the victims cannot speak out. Why? Because the family member who takes care is there and they are vulnerable. And it could be this is the only family member who is around and who cares. So what we are saying is that, look, we can create first and foremost a community of care so that the family is not the sole carer. That's what NSCC is doing, the systems that we have built, so that the domiciliary care agencies can send certified caregivers to homes, and it will not cost an arm and a leg if this care is subsidized. So the care for older persons is not only centered in that family where some family members can now begin to experience burdens of care and can begin to abuse. So we can have a referral system and we can have home visitation. Philanthropists can come, adopt their community, work with NSCC and send and upgrade domiciliary care agencies that we will certify and accredit so that certified caregivers can be sent to homes. That way, you will reduce abuse.
Yes.
That way, care of older persons become a community concern. It becomes a community concern. And where the caregivers inside cannot handle, we have already developed a referral system where older persons can be referred.
Dr. M.M. Omokaro, Director General, National Senior Citizens Center, we want to thank you so much for joining us. We hope we'll have longer time to talk more on this, but we do commend your efforts and that of your agency. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's always a pleasure.
Thank
it's
you
always
very
a
much.
pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
And that's it on today's episode of the program. Do join us same time next week for more on Insight. My name is Nnamdi Odipo.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori. We'll see you next week. Bye for now.